All right, folks, we're going to get started here. If you could take a seat or find a place to stand. It looks like we're standing room only. So hello and welcome. My name is John Riggins. I'm the statewide planning manager for the Arizona Department of Water Resources. With me today from the department are Ryan Mitchell, chief hydrologist, Natalie Mast, AMA director of management plans, Emily LaDolce, water modeling section manager, Nicole Clovis, chief counsel, Shauna Evans, public information officer, and Sharon Scantleberry, program and project specialist. I would also like to take this time to acknowledge any elected officials who are present at the meeting. I saw Supervisor Bishop, Representative Cobb, but anyone else who would like to stand up and identify themselves?
District 1.
Thanks, Supervisor.
Thank
Thanks, Supervisor. Thank you.
Mayor, City.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dirty water is mine.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. So ADWR staff is here to accept public comments and questions which will be provided to and considered by the director of ADWR. This meeting will be recorded, will be made available to ADWR's director, and will be posted online. I will provide the website address later in this meeting of where that will be posted. Mohave County is also live streaming this meeting through their YouTube channel. The department is not handling the YouTube stream or receiving comments through YouTube. If you wish to provide a comment virtually, please do so through the WebEx link for this meeting. By letter dated June 23rd, 2022, the Mohave County Board of Supervisors asked the director of the department to initiate procedures to designate the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as a subsequent irrigation non-expansion area, INA. By statute, the director of the department may initiate procedures to designate a groundwater basin as an INA if he or she determines that certain requirements are met. The process to designate an INA requires, among other things, that a formal hearing be held in the basin. Please note, the department has not initiated the designation procedures, and this meeting is not a hearing to designate an INA. The purpose of this meeting is to receive public comment and questions as to whether the department should initiate designation procedures. According to statute, the director may initiate proceedings to designate a new INA if he or she determines that two conditions are met. The first, that there is insufficient groundwater to provide a reasonably safe supply of irrigation of the cultivated lands in the area at the current rates of withdrawal. And the second, the establishment of an active management area pursuant to ARS 45-412 is not necessary. Next slide, please. At this meeting, ADWR will present some hydrologic information about the basin. We will also provide a presentation of the features and regulations of an INA. And finally, we would like to hear from members of the public about whether the department should initiate procedures to designate the Hualapai Valley Basin as an INA. We will also try to answer questions that you might have during the comment period. Next slide, please. So this slide here summarizes the letter from Mohave County. On June 23rd, 2022, the Mohave County Board of Supervisors requested that ADWR director take whatever actions available and necessary to designate the Hualapai Valley Groundwater Basin as a subsequent INA. The Board of Supervisors cited to updated USGS modeling and ongoing and extreme drought conditions as part of the basis for this request. By letter dated June 24th, 2022, the director indicated that ADWR would review updated modeling and other relevant information, including current and projected drought conditions, and receive public comments on whether to initiate designation procedures. Once again, the department has not initiated the designation procedures, and this meeting is not a hearing to designate an INA. Next slide, please. So we will now move into tonight's first presentation, which I will provide, and I will give an overview of the INA designation process and regulatory features. Next slide, please. An INA is a groundwater basin, one or more subbasins outside of an AMA, where only lands that were irrigated during a historic 5-year period may be irrigated, and where most large wells must have their withdrawals measured and their withdrawals reported to ADWR on an annual basis. We'll go over those requirements in more detail later in my presentation. Next slide, please. 2 INAs created by the Arizona legislature were established by the 1980 Groundwater Management Act. Those 2 INAs, the Joseph City INA in Navajo County and the Douglas INA in Cochise County. The 1980 Groundwater Management Act authorizes the director of ADWR to designate a groundwater basin or one or more subbasins that is not an active management area as a subsequent or new INA. To designate a groundwater basin or subbasin as an INA, the director must determine, following a public hearing, that 2 criteria are met. The first is that there is insufficient groundwater to provide a reasonably safe supply for irrigation of the cultivated lands in the area at current rates of withdrawal. And the second is that the establishment of an active management area is not necessary. 3 criteria are relevant to whether establishment of an AMA is needed. First, active management practices are necessary to preserve the existing supply of groundwater for future needs. Second, land subsidence or fissuring is endangering property or potential groundwater storage capacity. And the third, use of groundwater is resulting in actual or threatened water quality degradation. This slide is a map showing the locations of 3 existing INAs: Joseph City in the northeastern portion of the state, the Douglas INA in the southeastern portion of the state, and the Harquahala INA in the west central portion of the state. As a reminder, today's meeting is not initiation of procedures. It is a meeting to receive comments on whether the director should initiate procedures. If procedures to designate an area as an INA are initiated by the director or by petition to the director by the minimum number of persons, then beginning on the date that the director gives notice of the initiation of designation procedures, only lands irrigated at the time during the 5 years preceding the notice may be irrigated while the designation procedures are underway. The prohibition on irrigating new acres remains in effect until the director makes a final determination on whether to designate the area as an INA. If that determination is to designate the area as an INA, the prohibition on irrigating new acres becomes permanent. If procedures to designate an area as an INA are initiated, the director must hold a public hearing to allow public comment on the question of whether the area should be designated as an INA. Notice of the public hearing must be published once a week for 2 consecutive weeks in a newspaper of general circulation within the counties in which the proposed INA is located. The hearing, the director must present factual data in the director's possession in support of or in opposition to designation of the INA, and any person may submit evidence for or against the INA. Within 30 days after the public hearing, the director must issue written findings on whether the area should be designated as an INA. As I mentioned earlier, to designate an area as an INA, the director must find that there is insufficient groundwater to provide a reasonably safe supply for irrigation of the cultivated lands at current rates of withdrawal, and that the establishment of an active management area is not necessary. If the director finds that the area should be designated as an INA, the director must issue an order designating the area as an INA. The director's findings and order must be published in a newspaper once a week for 2 consecutive weeks, and the order becomes effective when published for the second time. The director's findings and order are subject to requests for review or rehearing and actions for judicial review. Next slide, please. I will now go over the requirements in an INA. The first is that there is a prohibition on irrigating new lands in the area. For subsequent INAs designated by the director of ADWR, only lands irrigated during the 5 years preceding the notice of initiation of the proceedings to designate the area as an INA may be irrigated with any water. There are 2 exceptions to this prohibition on irrigating new acres. The first is that lands not irrigated during the 5-year historic period may be irrigated with surface water pursuant to a surface water right that was established prior to the notice of proceedings to establish the INA. The second is that lands not actually irrigated during the 5-year historical period are deemed to have been irrigated if substantial capital investment was made for the subjugation of the land for an irrigation use during the 5-year historical period. Substantial capital investment is determined on a case-by-case basis. In an INA, a non-exempt well must have a measuring device if it withdraws groundwater for an irrigation use, or if it withdraws more than 10 acre-feet of groundwater per year for a non-irrigation use. Also, each person withdrawing groundwater from a non-exempt well in an INA must file an annual water use report with the ADWR. There is one exception to these requirements. A person who withdraws groundwater from a non-exempt well for the irrigation not more than 10 contiguous acres is not required to use a measuring device or file an annual water use report with ADWR. Exempt wells or domestic wells use less than 35 gallons per minute non-irrigation use, and they do not require a meter. So that concludes my presentation on the INA, and I will hand the presentation over to Emily for the hydrology.
Thank you. Well, hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. My name is Emily LaDolce, and I manage the groundwater modeling section at ADWR. I'm going to be talking to you about the hydrology and groundwater modeling that has been done in the Hualapai Valley Basin. All right, if we can pull up the slideshow, perfect. This is the agenda for the hydrology portion. I'm going to start with a regional overview. I'll get into some details about the Hualapai Valley Aquifer System, talk about modeling that has been done to date, and then get into some preliminary modeling that ADWR has done for the purposes of this meeting. We'll also touch on some additional information about the aquifer. And what you're looking at on the screen is Mohave County, that's shaded green. And we've got the groundwater basins outlined in black. The Hualapai Valley groundwater basin is highlighted yellow. And before we move on, I want to take a second to define what a groundwater basin is. Physically, it is a defined basin that has a bottom and sides that contains groundwater within saturated alluvial sediments. These are think sands, gravels, silt, anything that was deposited millions of years ago and forms up the basin. It's like a big bathtub that was filled up, and then the water is at the bottom of it. In addition to a physical definition, these groundwater basins are also defined in Arizona statute. So there's that statutory definition as well. All right, next slide. All right, we're looking at an aerial photo of the Hualapai Valley groundwater basin, and the basin itself is outlined in blue. The sides of this basin are the mountains. So we've got the Hualapai Valley Mountains in the south, the Surbet Mountains to the west, Music Mountains to the east. And then as you move to the very north, Lake Mead and the Colorado River form the northernmost boundary of the groundwater basin. Elevation ranges in this area from over 8,000 feet above mean sea level in the Hualapai Mountains, all the way down to about 1,000 feet above mean sea level by Lake Mead. There's no perennial surface water in this area, which means that groundwater is the only continual source of water. It's arid to semi-arid, and what this means is that on the valley floor, you could get anywhere from 5 to 10 inches annually of rain. And up in the mountains, you could get up to about 17 inches of precipitation, and that will fall as both rain and snow. All right, next slide. All right, now I'm going to get into the Hualapai Valley Aquifer System. The map that you're looking at, it's that same region. It's outlined in red this time because we like to keep people on their toes. And the mountains are in brown. So you can see those same Surbet Mountains, Hualapai Mountains, Music Mountains, and the aquifer system is found within the gray area. And on the previous slide, I mentioned that these basins are like bathtubs that are filled with sediments. The contours that are in the gray aquifer area show the depth to bedrock. So that tells you how deep the aquifer is. If you will click ahead, please. Okay, to drive this point home, I've got a cross section up here. So A to A prime is going right across the Hualapai Valley, and it's being pulled out of the groundwater model. So what you see is that the edges of the basin are quite thin, on the order of just 100 feet or so. And then as you move to the center of the basin, it gets really deep, over 10,000 feet at the deepest part, which is found in the Red Lake Playa area. All right, click ahead. So natural recharge is water that flows into the aquifer absent of any human activity. And this comes from washes, so like Truxton Wash and Hualapai Wash, and then also precipitation in the mountains. Whatever doesn't evaporate or get used by plants will flow down and then towards the center. The depth to water in this area is on the order of 300 to 700 feet below land surface, and that varies depending on where you are. Groundwater flow generally goes from south to north. Groundwater does move underground. It's pretty slow, but it'll go from areas of higher elevation to lower elevation. And so because the highest elevation is to the south, the groundwater is flowing to the north. It'll also tend to flow from the sides into the middle. Did we skip one? Did we skip one? No, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to go through are 3 example monitoring wells, just to give you an idea of local conditions in the aquifer over time. And what you're looking at on the screen is a map, again, of the groundwater basin. And I've got ADWR's index wells on the map. Those are the dots that you're seeing. The index wells are a network of monitoring wells that ADWR maintains all over the state. And these are regularly visited, and we get water level data from them. So they're really great for getting an understanding of what your groundwater conditions are in a certain area and for time, because what you'll be seeing in these graphs, these hydrographs, is that the monitoring period started back in the 60s for these wells and then go through 2022. So we've got a really nice 60 plus year period of record on these. Okay, last thing on this slide is that all of...
Excuse me, but would you mind speaking into your microphone or I'm a little bit hard of hearing and I cannot understand almost anything that you're saying. So please speak a little slower and then a little louder.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. And please stand up again if that's a problem. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go through these monitoring wells. I want to point out at the top, there's a website there. If you are interested in visiting this website, all of our data are publicly available. All right, so first monitoring well that I'm using as an example is down by the Kingman area. And what I want to point out is that this well started back in 1960. The depth to water was about 510 feet below land surface. And over the 60 some odd years that we've been collecting data from it, the water level has declined about 90 feet. All right, next slide, please. The second example monitoring well is by the Truxton Wash area. And this one started out in the 60s at about 520 feet below land surface. And then you can see that it slowly declined through the 90s where it started to stabilize a little bit. And when you see a well stabilize, that could indicate that you have roughly the same amount of water going into the aquifer as you do coming out. And that is reflected in the water level being pretty flat in this well. So between about 1990 and 2005, you see a pretty flat water level. And then you see it bump up. And that would indicate that there's a little bit more water going in at that area than there is coming out. And given that it's by Truxton Wash, maybe it was responding to a really heavy storm that finally made its way down to the aquifer. And then starting in about 2010, you see it decline again, and that would indicate more water coming out. Next slide. All right, the last well is up in the northern part of the basin. This one is right off of Pierce Ferry Road. The depth to water is deeper. It's about 660 feet below land surface. But the trend on this well has been really flat over those 60 years, which suggests that you have a balance in the water coming in and going out in that area. Next slide, please. All right. So that was an overview of the hydrology, and now I'm going to move into some of the groundwater modeling that has been done for this area. And there are 3 reports that I want to point out to everybody. All of these reports are available online, so I'm going to give the very briefest of descriptions of what they are. If you want to know more about it, I would encourage you to go to these websites and take a look. So the first one is this USGS preliminary model that was released in 2013. And this studied the Hualapai Valley Basin as well as 2 other basins. So what you can see from the picture up there, that's the cover of the report. It's a little bit bigger than that Hualapai Valley groundwater basin. It's because it grabbed some 2 adjacent basins. This one was setting some framework for future modeling. It set up a grid for the basin, so it defined like a bottom and the sides. And then it also set up a water budget, which is really just an accounting of water coming in, like from the mountains and the washes, and the water going out, say through municipal pumping, agricultural pumping, etc. All right, next click. Thank you. So the next report that I want to talk about was done by ADWR with the help of Matrix New World Engineering. This was released in 2019. This was pursuant to legislation that directed ADWR to work with an independent consultant to estimate the number of years of groundwater remaining in the basin. And so the result of this study was a groundwater model that covered the Hualapai Valley groundwater basin and 3 adjacent basins. And they put in the inflows and the outflows and made some estimates of what sort of growth would occur in the future, primarily in the agricultural sector, and then ran that model out for a couple hundred years to see where the water levels ended up. Next, thanks. Okay, so the last model up here is the most recently released one from the U.S. Geological Survey. This came out in 2021, and it focused on the Hualapai Valley all by itself. It's assessing potential groundwater level declines from future withdrawals. And this one had refined estimates of agricultural growth. So that improved estimate was put into this model and run out a couple hundred years to see where the water levels ended up. Okay, so that brings me to the modeling that ADWR did for this meeting. What we did was, sorry, I can hear myself breathing through the microphone. Okay, so we wanted to run out current conditions because for the irrigation non-expansion area request, that's one of the things that the director needs to look at is current conditions, how those will impact the aquifer in the future. So before I get into the results, I just want to give you a quick overview of what went into the model so you have an idea of what data we're relying on. So starting with the inflows, and these are the things that add water to the model, I'm just going to put them up on the screen and you can see where they come in the basin. So the first one is incidental recharge. It's showing up in these green areas. This accounts for about 35% of the inputs back into the aquifer, and this is coming from like municipal pipe leakage and also septic fields. Second largest component is natural recharge, which is these blue areas. It's coming in around the mountains. All of this is just the precipitation that's making its way into the aquifer. That's accounting for about 30% of the total. Okay, the next component is agricultural return flow. Those are located in these orange areas. That's about 20% of our total. And the last component is wastewater treatment plant effluent. So the treated wastewater from the municipal treatment plant gets either injected back into the aquifer or it infiltrates into the aquifer from settling basins. And those are kind of hard to see, but it's the red dots down by the Kingman area. Okay, and so total inflows are roughly 12,000 acre feet per year. All right, let's go into the outflows now. Outflows are what's taking water out of the model. And the first one I'm going to is domestic and industrial use. This accounts for 10% of the total outflows in the model. The next one is, that's okay. Okay, natural discharge. This is another 10%. You can see it's that blue line up toward the north. I mentioned that the basin terminates at Lake Mead. And if you can see from this figure, the model actually cuts off before then. So you have a little bit of groundwater that's flowing up towards the north and out of the model area. Our next component is municipal pumping. This is about 20% of the total outflow, and that's occurring in those red wells down toward the south. And the final component is agricultural pumping. This is about 60% of the total outflow, and that's occurring in those orange areas that you see. And total outflows are roughly 45,000 acre feet, which is approximately 4 times the inflows on the previous slide. Okay, getting into the results. Before I throw another bunch of maps at you, I wanted to take a minute to familiarize you with what the colors are going to mean. So I'm going to be talking about the results in terms of depth to water below land surface. And if you can click, okay, thanks. There we go. Okay, so the color coding is us. Purple is water closest to the surface. And as we move down into the lighter purple, the water is getting deeper. As we get into yellow, the water is getting deeper still. Now we're in between 500 and 750 feet below land surface. Moving into orange, we are now in a 750 to 1200 range. And finally, the red cells indicate water levels deeper than 1,200 feet below land surface. I just want to say there's nothing like magic about the numbers here. There's no significance behind like 750 or 500. It's just what I picked. So you'll see that number crop up a lot, but there's really nothing to it. And the other thing is that this is the first time that ADW modeling of current conditions have been presented. So these results are preliminary and subject to change. All right, with that disclaimer, we can move into the maps. Okay, so we've got our reference cube down there to remind you what the colors mean. This is a map of modeled depth to water in 2021, which is approximately present day. Okay, point out a couple things. So the Red Lake Playa area is approximately where that purple, she'll bring it back, that purple blob is in the north center. I think she'll bring it back. Okay, thanks. All right, so that's that. And then that orange crescent that you see down toward the south of the model, that is kind of in the new Kingman Butler area. Valley Vista is kind of the northern tip of that crescent, and then the Kingman area would be the southern tip of it. Okay, so let's move into 50 years in the future. At current pumping, what do depths to water look like? And this is what we're looking at. The biggest change that you see is to that orange crescent area that has expanded, which means that places where your depth to water is greater than 750 feet have also expanded. Okay, and then after 100 years of pumping at current conditions, the model results show that that orange area has further expanded. It's roughly doubled in size, and everywhere in there is deeper than 750 feet below land surface, and it's approaching 1,200 feet below land surface, which you can see there are a couple model cells down by the very south of that area that have gone deeper than 1,200. That's an area, it's roughly between the Kingman Airport and the Peacock Mountains, just for reference. Everywhere else in the basin shows some minor changes, but in general, the bulk of the pumping is occurring down in that southern area. And so that's where we're seeing the bulk of the impacts. Next slide. All right, so what does this mean for agricultural well depths? What I've got up on the screen is a map of agricultural wells. There's roughly 140 of them in the basin. We get this information from ADWR's well registry database, and it's color-coded by completion depth, which just means that's how deep the casing goes. There's no information about screen interval, which would be where the water can actually come into the well. So this is just kind of a proxy for how deep the wells are. For the most part, all of the wells are between 750 and 1,200 feet deep. There are some shallower ones and some deeper ones. Okay, so how does this compare to modeling results? The colors that just came up on the screen are the depths to water filtered for the areas that are deeper than 750. And so what you can see is that little orange crescent area overlaps some of those agricultural wells, which just means that they are now pumping in an area where the water is at best 750 feet below land surface. Fast forward 50 years, that orange area has expanded. It's grabbed more of those agricultural wells, and now we're looking at about 7% of wells are pumping in an area where depth to water exceeds 750 feet. And then after 100 years, like you saw in the previous slide, the orange area is even bigger and has grabbed more wells, and there's even some places where depth to water is in excess of 1,200 feet. And just from a practical standpoint, if your water level is at 750 feet, you can't just stop your well there. You all know this. You've got to go deeper to get the water out, which can get expensive. Okay. So that was it for the modeling. Just want to go into a little bit of additional information about the aquifer. Starting with land subsidence and fissuring. And this can happen in areas when groundwater is removed, the land tends to settle around the voids where the water used to be. So I've got a couple pictures on this slide. We'll just have to be patient as they pop up. All right. This is from Eloy, Arizona, and it's a measurement from 1952. That's the land surface marker up in the air there. And then 2018 is where the guy is standing. So that land has subsided over 16 feet in that time. ADWR monitors subsidence all around the state, and we do it on a regular basis. We do it using microgravity surveys, which is where people actually go out in the field and are measuring things. Here's another picture. This is a well casing that is now floating, or a completion pad that's floating in the air now because the land subsided, and that's a fissure. Those are all in the southeastern Arizona area, not up here. In addition to the microgravity surveys, we also look at INSAR data, which is satellite data that we get from NASA. And then the moral of the story for the Hualapai Valley groundwater basin is that currently there's no subsidence or fissuring that has been observed in the basin. I'll just let her pull the presentation back up before I keep going. Okay, sorry, we're just going to take a pause for a moment. All right, everybody, it looks like we're up and running again. Thank you for your patience. I'm just about to the end of my slides, and the other piece of additional information that I want to share has to do with water quality. Water quality was last measured in the basin by the state, by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality in the early 2000s. And what they found is that the groundwater is slightly alkaline, fresh, and hard to very hard. And they're basing that on measurements of pH, total dissolved solids, and hardness. They found some elevated nitrate concentrations. And then, as everyone is aware, there's that large salt deposit underneath the Red Lake Playa, and that contributes to elevated TDS in that area. All right, so to wrap up my presentation, I'm just going to summarize some of the hydrology that we talked about. So at the current rates of withdrawal, the depth to groundwater will increase. Based on the preliminary modeling that we did, the greatest change you're seeing in that orange area down by the south, which is where the depth to groundwater exceeded 750 feet. That area roughly doubles in size over 100 years. Additionally, depth to water exceeds 1,200 feet after 100 years between the Kingman Airport and the Peacock Mountains. After 100 years of pumping at current levels, you have roughly 17% of existing agricultural wells located within areas where depth to water exceeds 750 feet. And this is where I want to remind you that there's nothing special about 750. It's just a number I picked for the model. Okay, and then finally, for the basin as a whole, the outflows are currently exceeding inflows by a factor of 4. You've got roughly 12,000 acre feet of water coming into the aquifer, and you've got roughly 45,000 acre feet of water going out of the aquifer. And when you have a situation like that, water levels on the whole will be declining, and that's what the modeling shows. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emily. So moving right along, we are to our public comment portion of the hearing. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, if you have not already done so, please sign one of the sign-in sheets located at the table near the entrance of the auditorium. If you'd like to provide oral comments or ask questions today, you'll need to fill out a speaker card, also located on the table near the entrance of the auditorium. Once you've filled out a speaker card, please provide it to Sharon Scantleberry, sitting here in the corner, who is sitting here in the corner. Not standing near the entrance anymore, like my notes say. So for those attending virtually, a link to the virtual speaker card has been provided in the chat feature of WebEx. If you wish to provide comments, please click the link, fill out the form, and submit it to be placed on the speaker list. We will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. We are not accepting comments through the YouTube streaming channel that the county is streaming. So if you'd like to provide comments virtually, you will have to do so through the WebEx link. The director will also consider written comments. Written comments may be submitted in person, by mail, or by fax by 5 p.m. September 30th, 2022. Written comments should be sent to Sharon Scantleberry, Arizona Department of Water Resources. Sharon's mailing address is 1110 West Washington, Suite 310, Phoenix, Arizona, 85007. And our last slide will have all of this information, and that will be published to our website as well. Her email address is scantleberry@azwater.gov, and her fax number is 602-771-8686. And again, this information will be posted on the last slide. Sharon's business cards are also available as you exit the auditorium today or as you entered, if you have not picked up one already. The department can accept written statements or questions today as well. Those should be provided to Sharon. So I have here that we'll take a 10-minute break to collect any speaker cards. I don't know if we need to take a full 10 minutes. Sir, if you can, I'll answer all questions addressed through, if you haven't filled out a speaker card, I'd like you to fill one out if you have a question.
Since we have some weeks, we could probably just.
Yeah. So last call, I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't filled one out and you would like to fill one out, you can do so. Keep a running tally, and please provide that up front here to Sharon. I don't think so. So I'll just give it about a 2-minute break here, and we will be back at 6:54. All right, I think we're going to get started here. If you could find your seat or your standing area. All right, we have a lot of speaker cards to get through, so I'm going to get started here. We'll ask that others refrain from talking while a speaker is speaking, and that the speaker direct his or her comments or questions towards me and the rest of the members of ADWR here, rather than to members of the public or anyone in the audience. So Natalie Mass will be helping me call speaker cards. We will call a name, and then we'll also say who's up next so you can be prepared.
All right. In the interest of time, we do ask that the second person in line be prepared to come up to the podium, please.
And I will just say this too, we do have a lot of speaker cards, so if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The podium will have a countdown timer on it. I think at a minute left, it'll be yellow and then red when you're out of time. So that way we can get through all the comments today. Thank you.
Great. All right. Our first speaker card is Jamie Macy and Jake Knight. And the second person will be Jean Bishop.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Macy. I'm the Associate Director for the USGS Arizona Water Science Center. And as you all know, we've been working in Hualapai Basin since about 2007. It all started with the Arizona Department of Water Resources Rural Watershed Initiative. We're also doing quite a bit of work for Arizona Department of Water Resources looking at the water use in Hualapai Basin. As we give you comments here for the groundwater model that you presented, which was great. We're so admirable that you're using our groundwater model for purposes here in Hualapai Basin. I want to introduce Jake Knight. This is the hydrologist who developed the groundwater model for Hualapai Basin. Jake is going to give a few words about the model itself. But I also want to say that when this all started here in Mohave County, Nick Hunt had a vision for USGS to develop a tool for Mohave County and the city of Kingman to better manage their water resources. And so in cooperation with Mohave County and the city of Kingman, the USGS developed this groundwater model that Jake will talk about as a tool for the county and the city to understand and manage their water resources.
Thank you, and thanks for having this meeting tonight. My name is Jake Knight. I was the lead modeler of the Hualapai Valley hydrologic model. As a modeler, I often think of this adage, all models are wrong, some are useful. It's because models are simplified representations of the complex natural world. So it's important to think about uncertainty in modeling and in forecasts. This model simulates historical conditions from 1935 to 2019, and observations available during those years were used to fine-tune the aquifer properties like transmissivity and storage capacity that are represented in the model. Now, the reason those properties are important is because they directly impact the outcome of any future pumping scenario. And so to basically retain that uncertainty, the model was published as an ensemble of 40 models that represent a range of aquifer properties that are all equally likely given the available observational evidence. When you feed a model a range of inputs, you get a range of outputs, and that can be important to consider the range of possible outcomes. So in cooperation with Mohave County, we developed a tool that allows anyone with a certain level of technical capability to update the USGS model and run their own future pumping scenario and look at the outputs. And once that is through our peer review, it'll be available on sciencebase.gov. Thank you.
Right. Next up, we have Jean Bishop. And after that, we have Supervisor Travis Lingenfelter.
Thank you and good evening. So happy that you were able to travel to Mohave County, specifically Kingman, for holding this meeting for the public and helping us to understand what an INA is. My name is Jean Bishop. I'm a lifetime resident of Mohave County. So the District 4 Supervisor and current President of the County Supervisors Association of Arizona. I'm just very deeply concerned over this issue. A portion of the Hualapai Valley Basin is in my district, and I want to be able to ensure that the community has access to water that is not only plentiful but affordable. We strongly encourage ADWR to use its authority to designate the Hualapai Basin as an INA. For anyone who is against this designation, an INA does not hamper growth in the county. It will not impact residential gardens or fields less than 2 acres. What it will do is allow us to manage our groundwater in a responsible way, unlike how it's being handled now. Looking back over the past decade, the basin has seen over an 88% increase in the number of high-volume wells being installed. This is by far more than the county or the city ever anticipated, and means that our basin's groundwater is being depleted faster than we can replenish it, as you just showed us on your presentation. Decades of non-groundwater management, prolonged drought, and heightened fire dangers, ADWR really needs to do the right thing and designate this basin. This will give our community confidence that we will continue to have access to water to support future generations. For agriculture and wells, Mohave County has no say in the land use approval process. There are no reporting guidelines on how much water these wells can pump, or how deep these wells can be, or how many wells these parcels can have. This leaves our county at a severe disadvantage when it comes to planning for growth and economic prosperity. The decisions regarding wells and agriculture are left up to you, or the director. We know our county. General plan lays out how we will see our county growing and prospering. Plan does not anticipate large-scale farming or irrigation. However, by not having the basin designated as an INA, the county and its taxpayers will be left holding the bag when the basins reach critical levels because of large-scale agriculture. What happens when the basin reaches critical levels? Many of us have asked. Unfortunately, the county taxpayers will bear the burden of higher water costs and potential tax increases to pay for deeper wells, or heaven forbid, they'll be faced with having no water. Right now, the costs associated with drilling a new well are very expensive. Can you imagine what that cost will look like in the future? This can be avoided. We have a chance of preventing this, and I hope you will consider designating this aquifer an INA. I have submitted my written comments to Sharon. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And yield my time to her.
Yeah, I will allow it. What's your name?
Stand Shaver.
Thank you so much. That is so generous of you. But actually, I was just about finished. I was just going to say in closing that this can all be avoided. We have a chance of preventing this by having ADWR designate the Hualapai Basin as an INA, giving us the necessary management tools needed to ensure Mohave County has water for years to come, and that our region will continue to grow in the way that we planned. I just strongly encourage you to encourage the director to seriously consider designating the Hualapai Basin as an INA. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the support from our residents.
All right. Next up is Supervisor Travis Lingenfelter, and after that is Regina Cobb.
Good evening, esteemed panelists. Thank you for coming up to Kingman from Phoenix. We appreciate ADWR being here, holding this meeting. As you heard my colleague, Gene Bishop, state, Mohave County and the city of Kingman, we're really the organizations that we have the responsibility to look out for everybody that you see here in this auditorium. And I just want to say how proud I am that we have packed this auditorium tonight in support of continuing our lifestyle and for future generations to making sure that we have a safe water supply. So as Gene mentioned before, the county and the city of Kingman, we've been really in a partnership for several years now. I think formally that partnership started in 2017. We knew that this was going to be decided by the data. And so we partnered, we contracted with USGS, we had the water model constructed, and Mohave County is going to continue to work with the city of Kingman every year. We started this year, obviously, and we're going to run that model and make sure that ADWR has that data to track that. In 2007, 100% of the groundwater use was municipal and domestic use. Today, as we saw by your by your presentations, 28% of the basin is municipal domestic use, and 72% is agricultural use. As you showed in your slide, and I took some notes, the outflow from the basin today is 4 times as much than the inflow. And to give people that maybe not know in the audience, 1 acre foot of water is 326,000 gallons of groundwater. So if there's an outflow of 45,000 acre feet, that's over 10 billion gallons of groundwater being pumped out of the basin every single year. And as we saw on your slide, 60% of that is agriculture. We're not here to attack agriculture. We're here to say we have to stand up against the scale of it. From the county's development services folks, we estimate that they own at least 77,000 acres. They're not currently cultivating 77,000 acres, but at that scale, this basin, we cannot support that. We cannot support that. It's going to affect the city of Kingman. It's going to affect everybody else in our general plan. Agriculture, not to pick on agriculture, but agriculture is one of those things that is one of the only industries in Arizona because of ARS 11812. If you own 5 or more acres, you don't have to go through a planning and zoning process. You don't have to get a land use approval like every other industry does. And then after you have the land, you don't have to ask anybody to pump the wells. You can pump as many wells as you want, as deep as you want. You don't have to monitor it. So here in support of an irrigation non-expansion area, again, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Up next is Regina Cobb, and then we'll have Dennis Lang.
Good evening, Mr. Riggins and panelists from ADWR. For the record, State Representative Regina Cobb. I just want to say that over the last 10 years, Mohave County has requested some type of assistance from the Department of Water Resources pertaining to groundwater. Twice, ADWR has denied INAs for lack of current data. And as you can see, we do have current data here today. 2018, given Mohave County Groundwater Study Committee, within the study committee, there were 2 dynamic studies that we presented, which you addressed today was the ADWR matrix study, which was legislation that I passed in 2017 or 18, and then the USGS study, which was paid for by Mohave County. Both of these studies are very dynamic studies, which means that you can put in whatever you want to, as we heard from the USGS study, representatives here, that you can put in what you need to and you can get the output that you want. But it was apparent that there was a need for regulation in rural Arizona, and if data held true, a need for an INA is needed within the Hualapai Basin. Today, current data will be you presented fits that dynamic USGS model, and I'll get confirmation to need a IMA in the near future. Growers will tell you that the data is flawed. Although during our study committees that we had, which we had one for La Paz County and one for Mohave County, they were unwilling to give us voluntary data. I ask that you take the scientific data that you have and grant an INA. I want to thank Supervisor Lingerfelter for bringing the letter and asking for an INA, requesting it on June 23rd. I want to thank the other supervisors that are here, Supervisor Gould, Jean Bishop, for supporting this. I think that this is an important step for us right now. This is one of the only ways that we're going to be able to fight back and be able to maintain what we have right now. I'm just thankful for Director Buchowski for taking the 3rd request and allowing public comments here tonight. And I just ask that he designate this as an INA. And I want to say how proud I am of my community here tonight.
Up next, we have Dennis Lang, and then after that will be Leo Biasucci.
My name is Dennis Lang, and I am just so happy that we have politicians in the Mohave County area, like Regina Cobb, like Gene Bishop, like Leo Biasucci, who's going to follow me, because they fight for us. They fight for our water. Regina Cobb tried to push water through the legislators for years. For years, she did the best she could, and other people did the best they could. So happy to have them. I can say a lot of things, I can say statistics and everything, but I couldn't do any better than the politicians that just preceded me. They made their examples so good. They made examples, and you also. You brought all these examples up here on our screen. I appreciate that so much. We need this INA so bad. I moved here quite a few years ago. I moved here because I wanted a nice place to live that was beautiful, good weather, and I found that we had sufficient water until about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, probably. I see in these figures here, 97 wells in 2012, and 182 wells, large volume wells, and years later, doubled. It's unsustainable. One child born today will probably outlive the water. That's one generation. That's unsustainable. It has to be changed. And this INA is a way it can be changed. 75% of the water goes to agriculture. I moved from the Midwest. There's farms all over the place. I love farmers. This is the desert. This is the desert. It's arid. You can't have that much agriculture in an area like this. Our politicians are fighting for it. All these people come here. We have our place filled. Everybody I know is concerned about water, and we don't want it to dissipate. We don't want to lose it in one generation. I hope you understand this. From the bottom of my heart, I'm not going to live long enough to see it. But I don't care. I do care about that, but I care for the succeeding generations. I don't want that to happen to them. So that's all I have to say, and I hope that's enough.
All right. Up next, we have Tim Walsh, and after that will be Amanda Kaufman.
Good evening. My name is Tim Walsh. I am a resident of Kingman. I'm also the Mohave County Development Services Director, and I'm a licensed civil engineer. Once USGS put together their latest model, as was mentioned, they prepared an interface that the county could use to update the inputs to that model to be able to monitor the changing conditions. And we received, my technical staff received training from USGS, and we've been working closely with them to ensure that we do things properly and input those numbers properly. In addition to that, over the past 5 to 10 years, we have been monitoring the farming that has been going on in the area through aerial surveys, fixed planes, and through ground surveys as well. And those surveys showed us the level of activity that was going on, as well as the types of crops that were going on. Using that information, we input that data into the models, and similar to your findings, we found some concerning results. If I understood correctly, I believe the model that was presented tonight showed the current pumping levels carried out. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe that showed the current pumping models.
That's correct.
With that being the case, looking at land ownership, there's about 80,000 acres owned by the various farming companies in the area. Only about 10% of that is currently being cultivated. So looking at current levels and the results that we're seeing, if
if that acreage is fully cultivated, we have a severe problem. We're in a serious condition now with the current levels, looking at about 750 feet in 100 years. But if that land is allowed to be fully cultivated, that number drops significantly in time frame on reaching that 1,200 foot level or the 750 foot level. Again, I just want to thank you all for the effort that you're putting into this, for the consideration that you're giving it. As was mentioned, the county will continue to monitor the farming that's going on and continue to update our models and continue to work with ADWR and USGS on sharing the results that we find. So thank you.
Up next is Amanda Kaufman, and after that will be Mayor Ken Watkins.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Kaufman, and just like to say real quick here, I am one of 2 owners of Brown Drilling, and we have not drilled any of these irrigation wells. We focus primarily on domestic wells. And I'm going to ignore that. But with that said, beginning in 2009, we began receiving phone calls from developers that were looking at expanding the residential development into the county area. Then discussions kind of transitioned into developing mini ranches for tax write-offs. And by 2012, some of these developers were buying large amounts of vacant land for farming, doing nuts, alfalfa, vegetables, cotton, whatever it is. And at the time, there was speculation between about 2012 and 2014 that these land purchases were tied to future residential development that could be converted, or current development, and using the pretense of these irrigation wells that could be converted in the future to support residential development. And that was basically the beginning of the pursuit of the water development that we're all talking about right now. In the meantime, 10 years have passed, and there's been many irrigation wells, which you guys, I don't even know how many have been drilled since then. They've been approved, they've been drilled, some of them have been equipped. They're pumping, it's putting a potential stress on our existing water sources, and all of these wells are grandfathered in. So putting an irrigation non-expansion area in today is not going to affect any of those wells. They might get meters, they might have reporting, but it's not going to affect the problem that now exists 10 years later. And that was brought up in some meetings with Mohave County back then. And during the past 12 years, that expansion of the Hualapai Basin with the numerous irrigation wells, these large farms, they're already out there producing, some of them, but we shouldn't restrict the farms. You know, we should look at, like I said, doing that irrigation non-expansion area today doesn't affect any of that. We need to look at our policies and our procedures. We need to look at the tools and the techniques that Mohave County or even the state has before it that can look at managing how commercial farming is done. If it's saying these watering techniques or this type of irrigation is allowed in these areas, but I don't think we should manage any of or restricting any of these irrigation wells. In 2021, USGS came out with a new 3-year study that took into account all the permitted wells, including these new large irrigation wells, and there wasn't a current issue in there. It goes back to these models that are being used. It goes to the numbers. What numbers you put in, you get these numbers out. You put these numbers in, you get these numbers out. And it's all speculation. As a driller, and I know there's other resources here in town, like some of the pump guys, have you guys reached out to them and asked them how many wells are we having to drill deeper because of the activity that's going on? In short, I just don't think the establishing that irrigation non-expansion area is the solution for Mohave County. I think the county or the state, but the county should look at their ordinances and their variances and update them and try to manage the water restrictions that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Mayor Ken Watkins, and after that is Alan Barberich.
Thank you. Of course, my name is Ken Watkins, Mayor of City of Kingman. And first, obviously, we welcome you to our beautiful city, heart of Route 66. And we hope you find your stay warm and welcome. We sent a letter, our city council, back on September 6th to Director Thomas Bushatsky. And I would like to share that letter again with you and with all of us here. Director Bushatsky, on behalf of the Kingman Common Council, we look forward to ADWR taking public comment on the establishment of an irrigation non-expansion area, the Hualapai Basin, at the Mohave County Board of Supervisors Auditorium on September 20th, 2022. Our community has been severely impacted by the rapid proliferation of industrial-scale agriculture in our groundwater basin. Historically, agriculture has not been a significant user of our groundwater. In 2007, agricultural use was not even classified in reports cited by the USGS. Today, over 70% of the groundwater withdrawn from our basin is used for agricultural purposes. This is under current conditions, with approximately 8,400 acres in cultivation. There remains another 69,343 acres owned by agricultural interest, but not currently in cultivation. There have been over 20 private, non-exempt wells drilled in our basin with a larger pumping capacity than any municipal well serving the Kingman water system. USGS monitoring wells in the Kingman area show water levels declining from 40 to 48 feet from 1990 to 2020. Kingman Common Council thanks ADWR for their attention to our predicament. On behalf of the council, I urge you to take any and all steps necessary to establish and designate an INA for the Hualapai Basin. Thank you for considering this request. Of course, sincerely signed by me, Ken Watkins, Mayor. Thank you. And once again, we appreciate you being here.
Up next is Alan Barbarich, and after that is Morgan Ross.
Hello, my name is Alan Barbarich. Thank you for coming to Kingman today to speak with us, and thank you for the modeling work that you've done. I own a family-owned and family-managed farm at the far north end of the Hualapai Valley that we saw on some of the maps you had up there. Ours was the third hydrograph, which showed the completely flat water level. They're in what's called the Gregg Subbasin up there, which has an extraordinarily abundant supply of water, which isn't used by any other municipality. So it's not used by the city of Kingman, our neighboring Dolan Springs, Meadview, White Hills. They all draw their supplies from separate basins. I own a lot of property throughout the county, both in the Hualapai Basin and some of the other basins. We chose this area to start a farm because of the abundant water supply that exists there. The matrix study, I don't know if there's a projector available, but the matrix study that was done a few years ago projected out far in excess of 200 years water supply, and that was using a pumping rate that appears to be about 3 to 5 times the maximum pumping rate that we would ever see on our property that we're developing. I voluntarily signed a agreement with ADWR to monitor one of our wells. I believe that's the one that you showed up on the screen there. And the majority of the land that I own was not just with the intention of farming. So it's been assumed, I think incorrectly, I know incorrectly, that because I have a farm and I own more acreage, that I'm going to farm all of it. And that just simply isn't the case. I'm not a farmer by trade, and that's I was approached by my current manager, who will speak in a little bit. But one thing I would like to ask, and this is something that I've asked of the county in the past, and they have supported, was that the Greg's subbasin be evaluated separately because it does have a lot more water up there and different hydrologic properties. And I know that the response from ADWR to the county's request has been that the Hualapai Basin in 1984 was designated as a single basin and not 3 separate subbasins the way USGS designated it. So that's one request that I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Morgan Ross, then Steve Schmidt.
Yeah, we should see, yeah. Good evening. My name is Morgan Ross, and I'm with the Environmental Defense Fund, one of 5 members of the Water for Arizona Coalition.
I'm sorry to interrupt here. Did you?
I just wanted to respond that there is a statutory process in Arizona for establishing both basins and subbasins. So we have not legally established subbasins in this particular groundwater basin.
Thank you, Nicole. And can we reset the time? Okay. I apologize for interrupting.
Good evening. My name is Morgan Ross, and I'm with the Environmental Defense Fund, one of 5 members of the Water for Arizona Coalition. Our coalition has 60,000 Arizona resident members, and we are a public interest entity that supports water security for all people in Arizona, with a primary focus on state water policy. We're happy to learn more about the recent studies and information pertaining to the possible designation of an irrigation non-expansion area in the Hualapai Valley groundwater basin. We support the designation of the Hualapai Basin as an INA. Our coalition believes in the use of fact-based information to support proposals being brought forward to improve water security in Arizona, as well as the importance of robust public engagement at the local level. That is what brings us here today. I'd like to state a few striking facts affecting this region. U.S. Census Bureau data shows the population of the city of Kingman increased 51% over the last 20 years, and Mohave County grew by 35%. A USGS report published last year shows the installation of agricultural wells and related pumping have also been increasing in the Hualapai Valley Basin. In fact, irrigation pumping increased from 8,000 acre-feet in 2014 to 35,000 acre-feet in 2017, an increase of over 400% in 3 years. Wells monitored by ADWR indicate some water levels have declined by 40 to 48 feet in the Kingman subbasin since 1990, and the USGS projects declines of about 85 to 130 feet by the year 2050. It is now well documented by both the USGS and ADWR that the Hualapai Valley Basin has been experiencing rapid declines for levels and is in a state of groundwater overdraft. We recognize that while INAs might not be an appropriate tool in all areas, they are one of the very few tools that are currently available to rural Arizona communities to help protect their water supplies. Local residents and our state and local water managers need to ask themselves, what policies will sufficiently safeguard these groundwater supplies for the future? Rural communities often depend on groundwater as their primary domestic water source and need tools to help protect their water supplies, preserve their rural heritage and well-being, and secure their economic future. Designating the Hualapai Basin as an INA is a step in the right direction. We look forward to providing additional written comments by September 30th. Thank you for your time.
Up next is Steve Schmidt, then we have Wayne Hollins.
Hello, thanks for coming out and listening to our comments. I'm Steve Schmidt, and I farm the farm at the end of Pierce Ferry, the one that Ellen Barbara talked about. And our family is there. We're about 20 family members. We have about 24 people on the payroll there. So it gives you kind of the scope of the people we have working. We have successfully harvested almonds in 3rd year in a row now, and the trees are doing very well. There's some few things that I would like to lift out. I farmed my whole life, and I moved here from Yuma, from farm produce there. I grew up growing trees in California.
more than likely, every person here probably has had something on their dinner table that I produced, because we had a large produce farm in Yuma, and we pretty well took care of the West Coast. That's just a fact. I'm not bragging, but it through the years, it just makes it that way. But anyways, there's some things that as we farm and we look at the farm, one thing I want, to clarify is we only have about a 6-month water season here in trees. And also with the 6-month period of time, we might have a well that can pump, say, 1,000 gallons a minute. But that don't mean we're pumping it at 1,000 gallons a minute. We might only be pumping at 500 gallons a minute. We have our hoses, our drip hoses have emitters on. That's all confined to a certain amount of water that can go out of that hose. So and we're not going to pump any more water than we need to, because that's expense. So we watch our water very closely. I know there's a lot of wells in the area that have been developed a number of years ago for farming that are no good. That drilled, and they were drilled more trying to sell property. Also, I know they talk about 80,000 acres of farmland. I just want to put people at ease. As a farmer, there's not 80,000 good acres, and I'm not downing our county. It's just that there's not 80,000 good acres to farm in this county that would have quality water under it to even do that, because you could get an area, maybe the soil would be okay, but the salinity would be high, the pH, different things. So that our acres in this county are very limited. You're probably seeing maybe another, I'm just going to say another 10 or 20% increase in acres you could at the most if people wanted to, and that might not even happen. So I know my time's very limited here, but there's just a few points I wanted to bring out to draw our attention. We're not trying to run the county out of water, and we're not trying to run ourselves out of water, because it's a lifetime investment. Thank you.
Next up is Wayne Hollins, and after that is Lynn Dion.
Hello, thanks for coming out and letting me speak to you. I am currently against the establishment of INA. The reason being, let me read something out of our Mohave County Low Impact Development Guide out in 2019. In Mohave County, the approximate average annual rainfall of 5 inches is equivalent to 3.59 million acre feet per year of water, based on the land surface area of 13,461 square miles. If 2% of this water, about 72,000 acre feet, were beneficially utilized, it is roughly equivalent to 90% of the county's municipal water demand projected in 2050. Approximately 80,000 acre feet in a high population growth scenario. On all these modeling displays I've seen, was talking about the water that's pumping out now and what it's going to increase later. None of it's on you how much water we're putting into the basins and what we're going to do in the future. We can regulate taking it out all you want, but that's not going to put any more into the basin. We can do that very simply. The county and the city have put in injection wells and stuff like that, which is good county projects. We got all these people out here and in the county that live here that can in their own low impact development things, rain gardens and what have you, on their own properties that will put water, not only grow things on their property, but will eventually get into the groundwater, what they don't use, and it won't be running off, tearing up our roads and washes. So until we use more of that water that we're letting run off, and once it passes your house, it's waste storm water. It's no longer any use to you. So if we capture some of that water, put it in the ground and use it, and we maximize, if we put in 20% of that water, what's that going to look like when we're drawing it out? So we need to look at putting water in and take, it costs money. On some levels, costs very little, put in a rain garden. Green infrastructure around the city and around the county. Some of it expensive, some of it not. But then we got to keep repairing the roads and the washes because we don't have the green infrastructure to minimize it. We won't stop it when we get a big monsoon in there, but we can make it significantly less. So let's put water into the ground as well as trying to take it out. Thank you.
Next speaker is Lynn Dion, and after that is Annette Bravo.
I'm going to read something that I wrote up today so I don't forget what I want to say. I work in the water industry, and at this time, the Hualapai aquifer does not qualify. So for a INA, I am against creating one when it doesn't meet the criteria. Thank you.
Next up is Annette Bravo. After that is Micah Roger.
Hello, my name is Annette Bravo, and I'm a rancher on the Hualapai Reservation, but I was just going to give a suggestion following the gentleman earlier about capturing the rainwater. As a rancher, that's our goal, and there's many projects and funding that's available to help capture rainwater, because the more rain that we can keep on the ground and help our grass grow, the better it is for our livestock. So that would be a suggestion I would give to the county in general, is as far as replenishing the water into our groundwater. Thank you.
Next up is Micah Roger, and after that is Jalen Schmidt.
Hello, my name is Mike. I also work with Steve Schmidt. He was my father-in-law. I was up here on the farm on the end of Stockton Hill Road in Pierce Ferry. And I just wanted to go through, I'm the main one that does our irrigating on the farm. So I just want to real quick run through our irrigation schedule and how we do things. You know, it's important for us to not waste water. I mean, it's like he mentioned earlier, that's just unnecessary expense. And so the method we used is a drip hose. It puts the water directly at the base of the tree. There's nearly no waste, nearly no evaporation. We do the majority of our watering at night. We've employed the use of soil moisture probes. So we have soil moisture probes that check different depths of water. And so if our saturation level is high, we don't water. We have crews that strictly go around, and if we have leaks, everything gets fixed. We try not to run any water out. Has been spoken to in the last couple comments, we actually do retention ponds. This is a picture of one of our current retention ponds. It was taken recently. All of our fields, you know, this is acres that we could have developed and planted trees and made money, but we've chosen to take acres out of our farms, and we run washes down and divert water into retention ponds and hold it in hopes that it'll make its way back to the aquifer. So I guess I'm against the INA. I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Next up is Jalen Schmidt, and after that is Michael Neal. And just a reminder for the folks that are up next, please do be moving toward the front of the room so we can move through the speakers as quickly as possible. Do we have Jalen Schmidt here?
Yes.
All right. Michael Neal, and after that will be Rob Owen.
Hello, my name is Michael Neal. My family owns Struxton Canyon Water Company and Servat Water Company. I'm the primary water operator for both of those companies. They're both in the Hualapai Aquifer. Also a fifth generation rancher in Mohave County. And my family at one time owned the majority of Hualapai Valley. I probably have more to lose, a lot of people here, if the aquifer is depleted. My issue is that all of my wells, the static water level has increased rather than decreasing. My largest well that I pump the most water out of is in the middle of the Hualapai Aquifer. It's gone up about 70 feet since we started monitoring it in the early 70s. I recently looked at a study that ADWR put out showing that there was 21 million acre feet of storage to 1,500 feet below the surface. At the current rate of depletion that everybody's been talking about today, to get the water level down to that 1,500 feet at 30,000 acre feet of depletion per year, just run a calculator. I don't have a model, but it shows me that that's 700 years of storage. My family has drilled a well in the Hualapai Aquifer down to 3,000 feet and have gotten good water up to that level with good quality and large quantities. I feel that there should be continued monitoring of the levels of the groundwater. I definitely don't want to run out of water, but I do not believe that there's justification for an INA.
Up next is Rob Owen, and after that will be Linda Kottner.
Hello, and thank you for being here. I'm Rob Owen. I'm chairman of the Water Sustainability Task Force. The task force was created in 2017 as a joint working group between Mohave County staff and City of Kingman staff to help share resources and knowledge on water resource projects. We worked on the USGS model along with an effluent recharge project that we're developing, in addition to some stormwater recharge projects, including 10 dry wells that we've installed. The Kingman Water Service, or the Kingman Water System, services over 50,000 people. Our water users are some of the most water efficient in the state. Our gallons per capita per day for residential users is 89, which compares favorably with any community around the state of Arizona. As the water system concerned, our wells are identified in the model as being some of the first affected. We do have wells that are 1,000 feet deep. We do have several wells that are a lot shallower than that. If we are looking to replace or drill new wells, in today's dollars, that ranges from $2 to $3 million per well, which would be a cost that our ratepayers would have to bear. In my personal opinion, for a situation that they bear no culpability for. So with that, just as a representative of the Water Sustainability Task Force, we would urge the director to initiate establishment of an INA. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just say we have a lot of comment cards. We just did kind of a back of the envelope assessment of how long at 3 minutes each will take, and we're looking at about 2.5 hours. So, and that's great. And I'm glad we're getting a lot of comment, and we've had a lot of great comments so far. But for the respect out of everybody's time, we will probably cut off. And I know we started a little bit late today. We're going to look at about a stopping point at 8:30. Any comments that we don't get to, or there's the gentleman who yielded his time. You are still able to provide comments to us. You can either provide it in writing here tonight or by email, fax, to the department or to Sharon. So the contact information will be available at the end. But I just want to throw that out there. We got a lot of great comments and everybody's willing to participate, but at a certain point, we are going to have to end the meeting. So with that, we'll jump right back into the comments. Thank you.
Next is Linda Kottner.
I'm not going to speak right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Up next, we have Rich Danderson, and after that is Paul Bowman. And again, please do try to come to the front as we call your names so that you can, that we can get through as many people as possible. Thank you. Rich Danderson. Right, Paul Bowman. After Paul Bowman will be Lewis Halfley.
Good evening. My name is Paul Boffman. I'm a civil engineer. I've worked in water resources for about 20 years. I just wanted to go over the local model that we ran here. As Tim Walsh mentioned, we did use aerial survey, ground GPS photos. We used advanced mapping to accurately gauge the amount of active and current cultivated farmland. So the model that we used and we shared with Arizona Department of Water Resources is using accurate numbers. We used information we acquired from conversations with the pistachio farmers to gauge the amount of water usage, both for newly planted trees as well as established trees for both this area and for Southern Arizona. So we're confident in our modeling assumptions. The existing groundwater usage by farms and the city of Kingman usage does cause groundwater levels to drop below 1,200 feet within the next 100 years. This meets the INA requirements for designating this area as an INA. These drops do occur below 1,200 feet in both the areas where the existing city of Kingman municipal wells are and where existing farm wells are. As far as the criteria that you mentioned for establishing that an AMA is not necessary, I'll point out that you brought up the fissures and the ground subsidence isn't happening here. I'll point out that the water quality reports show that the water quality for the surrounding water providers and the city of Kingman show good quality water. And then lastly, the process for an AMA or the processes used in an AMA not being appropriate. I'll just point out that in other AMAs where they require water to be recharged in order to have water withdrawn, there's no natural point here to recharge. The only way we can do that is through existing artificial recharge. I mean, the USGS report that was most recently run, which we used that model to run our local model, mentions that owing to low precipitation and high evapotranspiration rates, the pre-development natural recharge rate in Hualapai Valley Basin was small relative to other groundwater basins in Arizona. Natural aquifer recharge from precipitation was estimated at 5,700 acre-feet, which was less than 1% of the estimated total precipitation. Unfortunately, in the Hualapai aquifer, we don't have the advantage of depending on natural recharge. We have to do artificial recharge, which is extremely expensive. I mean, we've priced out basins for what it would take to recharge even a few hundred acre-feet of water each year, and those are expensive. They run in the millions. I mean, even another farm coming in would wipe out just tens of millions of dollars in investment in recharge basins. Thank you.
Next up is Lewis Halfley, and after that is Anita Waite.
I didn't sign up for this. I don't know who put my name in, but my wife must have sent it in. But I have 14 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, half of which live in the Kingman area. This is a desert, folks. It's not Oregon. We're Arizona, arid zone. We've got to conserve water. I want my grandkids to have water. So I am totally in favor of this INA. Please consider that. The farmers that are here now, fine. Support your farm. use your water, but we don't need no more expansion. If you want to expand your farm, go where it rains.
Up next is Anita Waite, and after that is Bob Dylan.
I'm Lewis. I'm Lewis.
Sorry. Oh, you're Lewis. Okay, go ahead, Lewis. Sorry about that.
So my name's Lewis Hafley. I'm a sixth-generation rancher here in Mohave County and a major landowner in Hualapai Valley. We have not observed any decline or change in the water levels of our wells. I believe that the INA is not needed and think that this will only serve to erode the value of the land and possibly stifle development. Thank you.
All right, Anita Waite, and then Bob Dylan, and after that is Ryan Sonner.
Hi, my name is Anita Waite, and I am the chairman of the Big Sandy Natural Resource Conservation District. We are right now in the process of having a hydrologist look at the area and where it'd be beneficial to put retention dams, check dams, and possibly some recharge wells. But we realize that our project is going to cost millions of dollars. We are talking with the state legislators on some legislation they have just passed. We are also talking with Game and Fish. We are talking to DWR with the Watershed Protection Fund, so that we're looking at, let's put water back into our aquifers. We can get more of our rainwater by doing the dams, the check dams in the mountain areas. That slows that runoff off and giving the water an opportunity to recharge into our aquifers. By putting in the retention dams, our farmers can also use that water to augment the water that they're pumping out of the ground, plus it gives an opportunity for that water to recharge into the ground. So rather than doing an INA, which I am totally against, let's fix the problem. Yes, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost millions, and we realize that. But we are starting. Our hydrology paper will be within the next couple of months. So we're looking at hopefully starting these recharge dams and our retention dams as soon as we can get all the permitting and the farmers to sign off on putting a retention dam on their farm. But we're talking about using the washes. And the farmers are absolutely right about the fact that they are not going to be able to use all the land, because you cannot put a crop in the middle of a wash. And you cannot put a crop where you have hills, and so that 77,000 acres is not ever going to be farmed. I could go on for a lot longer, but Mohave County has just approved within the last year 3 more subdivisions. If we are in such water desperation, why are we approving subdivisions? I'm done.
Up next is Bob Dylan, then Ryan Sonner, and then Brenda Stockbridge. Bob Dylan. Okay, Ryan Sonner. Next will be Brenda Stockbridge, then Kathy Tackett Hicks.
My name is Ryan Sonner. I work with Peacock Nut Company. I've been here since the mid-90s. I am their maintenance operations manager. I'm here to speak of the technologies we use and we develop to help conserve water, as well as water retention. I'd like to say that farming is a lot more technologically advanced than most people think. We monitor our water. We completely automate everything we do, from how much water goes into the ground, how much water is evaporating, what we're using, how we're using it. I don't know if anybody here waters their trees 24/7. 24/7. I don't. You don't water your garden 24/7. If you have a housing development, average of 300 gallons a day per home, just keep building developments, see what you get. If we're concerned about our water, let's look all the way around. I mean, honestly, farming, I'm against the INA. We are using responsible farming practices, and that's all I got to say.
Brenda Stockbridge is next. After that is Kathy Tackett Hicks, then Adam Collins.
Hello, I'd like to tell you that I'm not in favor of an INA. I work with Anita, trying to get, and we've been doing this for a while, we've recognized that Mohave County needs to be replenished, our aquifers need to be, worked on. But we need help with that augmentation and replenishment. We need government agencies to help us. And we have been trying to work with them for a while. And so runoff is a problem in Mohave County. In fact, it's practically a watershed county. Everything runs off. And so we want to help slow it down and hold that water so it's naturally seeps into the ground. We've, like someone talked about Nick Hunt, he's a real smart guy, and he's talked about how the alluvial plains around the foothills, that's where the water seeps in, not over at, on Red Lake, it's like concrete. You have to catch it, like Anita was talking about with the check dams. Groundwater depletion is a nationwide conversation, not just in Arizona. You've got problems in California, in Oregon. The Ogallala in the Midwest is going dry. That's not Arizona. That's not desert. And so it supports thousands of farms. I don't see anybody wanting to not eat, so we have to work on this. And so we cannot survive our population numbers without new ideas, which must extend beyond water restrictions. So for those reasons, I am not in favor of this.
Next is Kathy Tackett Hicks, then Adam Collins, then Alex Dom.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Tackett Hicks. I'm a 32-year resident in Kingman. I've been involved in the water issues for about 30 years. So I appreciate you coming and giving some preliminary thoughts to the basin. One thing is confusing to me, though. On the one particular area east of the airport, you said that was going to drop to 1,200 feet in 100 years. And ADWR previously issued 500-year adequacy statements for over or close to 50,000 acre feet of water. None of that's been used, but that particular site had a previously approved 100-year water adequacy statement approved by ADWR. It was called, I think, Peacock Vistas or Peacock something. And the farm on that site is using less than that. And will use less than what was approved. So that does not make sense to me. And I wondered how you were getting your output numbers. Like, where did those numbers come from? Because I know the farms have not been asked, and they have some significant high technology uses. Water uses are less. And there has always been a concern, and it's always been confirmed that the uses of water by the farms have been overassumed. So how did you develop those numbers?
Hi, thanks. I guess to address the 100-year adequacy thing, I believe that's only applicable to AMAs. So I'm not sure what that, Nicole, is going to help.
Yes, so the adequacy is the program that applies outside of AMAs. Assured water supply is within AMAs. The adequacy determination is essentially a snapshot at the time that the determination is issued. So if any of those adequacies were issued prior to the recent modeling that we've done, then it would have been based on the data and information that was before the department at that time. I can't speak to the specific circumstances of any particular adequacy determination tonight.
Right, and I understand that. I do process those. They're part of a subdivision. They assume 100 years of full development, and you're required to assume every water use. So I have a very comfortable feeling with the basin. That much was already approved by ADWR. The basin is, what, like 2 miles deep or some, I mean, it's incredibly large. And so that, to me, doesn't make sense. But were you able to answer how those...
Yes, I can answer that. So we contract with the USGS for these field verified crop surveys, and they go out in the field and look at what's growing and what is being planted and also what's fallow. And they take that and come up with an estimate of what consumptive use those plants would need. And so that's the consumptive use that went into their modeling effort in 2021, and then what we used when we took their model and modified the assumptions.
And then is that public record that we can get copies of how that was assessed and used? Because it's always been a problem of discussion. So I wonder if we can get that?
Yes, absolutely. The USGS numbers, they publish them online, and you get that link if you want.
That would be awesome. Thank you again. I'm opposed to the INA because I don't believe it's necessary. I do believe the city and council should be working towards water planning initiatives. Thank you. I know my time is up.
Up next is Adam Collins, then Alex Dom, then Luis Vega.
Good evening. My name is Adam Collins. I'm a military veteran and the horticulturist for Peacock Nut Company. We're very excited at Peacock Nut Company for the ag future of this valley. It's enormous. It's also a very common misconception I wanted to clear up about pistachio trees. They are a desert dwelling tree and drought tolerant. We have been watering 63% less than the industry standard and seeing optimal growth at those levels. So we are not in support of the INA. We don't see there being a problem at this time. We'd also like to invite all community leaders and anybody from the public to visit the ranch and see all our technology Ryan was talking about and all the ways we fight to conserve water every day. Thank you.
Up next is Alex Dom, then Luis Vega, then Jack Earhart. Alex Dom. All right, Luis Vega, then Jack Earhart, then Betsy Parker.
Hello, my name is Louis Vega. I'm a retired consulting geologist. I've been in Mohave County for over 46 years. And I've worked on a number of hydrologic models. And I guess my concern was there outreach to private individuals that had worked on hydrologic models by the USGS? Because in my experience, the Hualapai Basin is much more complicated than the models that I saw that they published. There are some units that are impervious within the basin that I did not see accounted for in their model. Specifically on the southeast side of Long Mountain, there's a small cinder cone. It has basalt flows that flow out into the valley. And wells have been drilled into that have been dry down to 1,065 feet, where the water then went up to the static water level in the basin. If the model included those cells as saturated alluvium, then that would put in a major error into the model. So I would just caution the USGS that perhaps they should reach out to people that have worked with the problems. There's a lot of emphasis put on the geologic or hydrologic models. Everyone talks about how many years of water is left because they put all their faith into a model. And my word of caution is that maybe that model is a lot more complicated than what is known.
Thank you.
Up next is Jack Earhart, then Betsy Parker, then John Sabana. Jack Earhart, Betsy Parker. No Betsy Parker. All right. John Sabana. Yes. Thank you. After John Sabana will be Helen Patillo and then Kay Hayward.
Good evening. I'll be brief. My name is John Sabala. I'm a Mohave County resident. I'm also a contractor that works for the farming industry. Sorry about that. I'm opposed to the IMA. I agree with the previous folks on alternate methods to recharge the aquifers. Not only here in the entire Southwest. I've been in the drilling and pump industry my whole life, and this is not a problem in this community. It's a problem over many millions of acres of land. So I don't think we need to do that. I think we can come up with alternate resources that a lot of the cities are doing, even down in Phoenix, with injection wells and things like that. And the biggest reason is you got to understand, this is my job. I work for the farm industry. You know, I feed my family with it. I have a lot of crews that they feed their families that way. Our crews come to this town. They bring revenues to this town. So it's a very positive thing in my line of work to see the farming community expand and prosper. Thank you very much.
Up next is Cullen Patillo, then Kay Hayward, then Dan Rodriguez. Do we have Cullen Patillo? No. Kay Hayward? Okay. After Kay will be Dan Rodriguez, then Deborah Adler.
Hello, I'm Kay Hayward. I've been a resident of Kingman for over 60 years. And I just want to say that I am in support of the INA. Thank you.
Next up is Dan Rodriguez, then Deborah Adler, then Jamie Staley.
Hello, my name is Dan Rodriguez. Thank you for coming here and listening to us. I've been in Mohave County for 44 years. I'm a rancher and been dealing with wells for a long time, and their levels go up and down. You got to live with that. It happens. Am I concerned? Yes, I'm concerned for my own well-being and that of my livestock. But looking at everything you presented today, the bottom line is in 100 years, there's still going to be water in that aquifer. The thing is, you know, how deep do we have to go to get it? And we've heard that there's going to be $2 million to drill new wells to go to that depth. The thing is, the drilling of the well itself is probably going to be the least expensive. It's all the infrastructure, everything that goes into the well, plumbing, and all that. And if you think the existing wells are going to stay the same with their infrastructure, their guts, and everything for 100 years, it's not going to happen. So the expense is still going to be there. You're going to have to probably replace the pumps and everything else at least 3 times. And like Ms. Kaufman said, you're shutting the barn door after the cows are out. The wells are already there, and according to your own guidelines, even if the INA does take place, if there's already sufficient expense put out for other wells or whatever else goes into it, that's going to stay. It's up to the director to determine that. But, you know, we could be still looking at more. I think we can try and come up with some other solutions. I know several months ago, Supervisor Lingerfelter, and at that time it was Mayor Miles came down. And we talked and we told him, well, keep coming back. Let's work something out. Maybe something like the Colorado River Committee. We can have different steps to go on. If this happens, what are we going to do? You know, but we haven't heard back from, and when I say we, that was the Farm Bureau and Livestock Association in Mohave County. So anyway, I'm just against the INA at this point. Thank you.
Up next is Deborah Adler, then Jamie Staley, then June.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Deborah Adler, and I'm a resident of Kingman. I've been here for about 8 years. This is a complex situation, obviously, and it requires information and studies that go beyond the bullet points that we've seen on some trifolds and other places. I do believe that the point of the outflow exceeding the inflow is 4 times right now is significant. I do want to say in respect that it's important to listen to the needs of our farmers and our ranchers because they're also one of our natural resources, and we're having a lot of great solutions presented here. So I hope we're not looking at an either-or situation, but I am speaking right now in favor of the INA. I believe that our water resources are not unlimited in the manner in which they're currently being handled. And I believe that in order to conserve our resources and prevent disastrous consequences for local residents, that an INA must be enacted to protect the Hualapai Valley Basin. Thank you.
Next up is Jamie Staley, then June, then Jeff Duarte.
Hello, my name is Jamie Staley. I am a lifelong resident of the city of Kingman. I am a small business owner, a parent, and I serve on the city of Kingman. I want to thank everyone for giving their time tonight to the most important issue facing the future of our city. And really, just to be brief, I want to say to you that we are counting on you to help us to preserve our water and to preserve the future of our city for future generations. I am in full support of an INA. Thank you.
Up next is June, then Jeff Duarte, then Brian Blanchard.
Hi, I'm June. I'm a Kingman resident, and I am counting on you to protect our water for future generations. Thank you.
Jeff Duarte, then Brian Blanchard, then Ryan McGuire.
My name is Jeff Duarte. I'm the CEO of Peacock Nut Company. We're down there by the airport. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Thank you all for your participation in this. The farming community is happy to be a participant in this conversation. We feel like we've been a little bit left out up to now. We do have a lot of important topics to cover, very little time to do so. We're opposed to the INA. We don't feel it's necessary. We don't feel there's a threat to our water supply at this time. The basic hydrology being we're modeling the top 1,200 feet of a 14,000 foot deep basin. You know, it doesn't take a lot of creativity to maybe see how we can extract more water at deeper levels over the next 100 years. I think this whole conversation on water has kind of come to a rolling boil. A lot of it has happened over social media. And I think we need to broaden this conversation out beyond social media and beyond the limited time we have in meetings like this, and get people on the farms. Get you guys on the farms, get our county supervisors on the farms, our city councilmen on the farms. We're doing some fantastic things. Our company has huge investments in recapture pits. We probably got the largest one in the area. We actually measure how much water that tree consumes by measuring the trunk diameter of it in microns, and we water accordingly. Water is very precious. We realize that. We want it to be here for hundreds of years, as is everyone else. We feel that we likely have several hundred years supply here if we model the whole basin, or at least half of it or so. So that's an open invitation to people to come out and take a ride with us and just check out our farm and see what we're doing for water conservation and water recharge. As far as the investment the ag community has brought to the city, our personal investment is $80 million or so. If you add in some of the other farms, which I don't have their numbers, but it's probably over $300 million so far. And that's important for a city like this, for schools and roads and libraries and whatever else we want to spend it on. But we want to be an important part of the Kingman area, and we want to work with our leadership to do so. Again, thank you so much for having us tonight and for hearing us out. And we look forward to a bright agricultural future in this area. Thanks a lot.
Ryan Blanchard, then Ryan McGuire, and then Sarah Fernie.
Barry.
Sorry.
My name is Brian Blanchard, and I'm the manager of Oasis Organics. We're the ranch and farm out on the old Neal Ranch. In interest of time, I'm going to kind of just consolidate my numbers here. I wanted to talk a little bit on this pamphlet that was put out. And I don't think ADWR had anything to do with this pamphlet that went out. Not a single word. There's a lot of misinformation on this pamphlet. I wanted to talk about some wells that I have knowledge of on our ranch that are actually monitored by ADWR and the USGS. One well, drilled 1973, 515 foot to water. 1980, it was 514. November 2021, it's 518, within 3 foot in 50 years. Another well we have on our ranch, drilled 1972, is 461. In 1985, it's 450, up 11 foot. I have another well, big well, 1964 drilled, 368 and a half feet to water, 360 in 2021. This well here is not on my property. Drilled in 2002, 687 foot. 2018, 662, up 25 foot. Well is on the corner of Gordon and Castle Rock, owned by the city of Kingman. I have some more wells with the same numbers. Those numbers come from your website, your information. What I've heard here tonight is a lot of assumptions. One thing the ADWR, by my understanding, is we can't work on assumptions. What if? What if we have rain like we've had this year for the next 10 years? You know, we've lost four or five lives in Mohave County due to floods in just the last 6 months. I'm not for an INA. I don't believe it's necessary. We have reached out to the county. We have not been successful in getting the county out to us. They've supplied false information, misinformation. And again, thank you for your time.
Next is Ryan McGuire, then Sarah Ferry, then Ryan Swap.
Thank you guys for coming on down. I want to start by saying I'm an Arizona resident, born and raised, third generation farmer from Parker, Arizona, La Paz County. Been battling this water issue my whole life. And it's getting a little old. The information that's out there, would love to bring everybody out to our farm, and I've invited everybody on social media, on every platform I have, to get them out to our farm to show them, you know, for themselves, our water consumption. We currently have 7 wells on the farm, so I don't know where the 182 wells, I know it's up there on the board and I know it shows that, but you can add all of our farms together and most of us are here. We don't pump that much water. And farmed down in Yuma, I farmed in California, I farmed all over the place, produce to, you know, cotton to wheat to everything, garlic, onions. Managed an 18,000 acre farm down in Blythe, California. And currently am a crop, you know, have my crop consultant license in Arizona and California. I'm very knowledgeable in water, and farmers have always tried to utilize that asset or that water to our best of our abilities. We currently, as I'm going to echo off of my buddy Adam there, we currently have technology such as Phytech to measure. They're called dendrometers that go on the trees, so that we can measure actually real life what the tree actually wants, the tree needs. And so by that, we can make all these graphs and we can put it together and put together a really nice irrigation schedule. And so, like Adam said, we are down 66% in our water compared to the UC Davis pistachio and the paper there in California that everybody goes by. We were up 46% in tree growth. That's a real number, and I can prove it to you. Anybody that wants to come out, and I'll show it to you. Let's see here. What else am I going to say? I mean, by having these trees out here is going to change the climate. I mean, the wind's going to slow down. You're getting more humidity. When I first got here 3 years ago, we were less than 9% humidity. Now we're seeing up to 12 to 15% humidity. That's going to relate right back to more rain, and this climate's going to change. It's going to be less wind, less dust out in Val Vista and everything else. And so, I really, it's kind of sad. I mean, that we have elected officials that know that Travis Lingenfelter just showed back up again, which that's awfully nice of you to show up and listen to us, considering that you're trying to do this, then you just left for the last hour listening to the people that voted for you. So anyway, that's all I got to say. I am against the INA. Thank you.
Sarah Ferry, then Ryan Swap, then Bill Fisk.
Hi, my name is Sarah Ferry, and I'm a local resident here in Kingman. I was born and raised. I learned a lot being here today, listening to you guys and watching this presentation. I've been following what's been going on with our water. I just want to say that this is a really hard thing. These are people's livelihoods, and I just wish that there was a little more talk about the difference between the people that are in our community that are ranchers that have been here ever since, and you see where you look at the graphs and the water wasn't even level, but things changed when water started being pumped out at such a greater rate. And so I think that the farms here that are using sustainable practices and have this information, your water is really important to you, and we can see that, And so I just wonder what's going to keep these big farms that are not even from anywhere near here, that are looking for communities that have no protections for their water, and then they grow and things don't stay in our community. My own partner has a small farm here, and she also uses sustainable farming practices, and I know that her land soaks up a whole lot more water than what's being washed away. So I don't know that this is perfect, but I do think we need to do something to protect our water. I support the INA, but I hope that our community can come together and look at how are we all using our water, and the businesses that come as our community grows, are they sustainable water users? You just can't try to look at one area and not look at it all. So I thank you guys for coming, and I thank all of you guys in our community for coming together. Thanks.
Ryan Swap, then Bill Fisk.
Good evening. Thank you for listening. My name's Ryan Swap. I moved to Kingman about 10 years ago with my wife and our 7 children, and the community has come to mean a lot to me. I'm a local physician here, and so I also rely on data to make decisions in my professional life. I think what's not in question here, I support the INA. I have great respect for farmers and the farming community, and I'm grateful for them and what they do. And my maternal grandfather was a farmer. And I think what's not in question is that we're using 4 times as much water as is being replenished in our aquifer. And I think if I understood you correctly, the modeling that you're using is based off of current usage. It doesn't account for any increase in the number of wells that would be permitted or drilled.
That is correct.
So in the past 10 years, we've seen a lot of drills, a lot of wells drilled. And I don't think there's any reason to assume that that won't continue. It's free water there. And I think it's a fair assumption that you've probably, in the model that you presented, grossly underestimated the amount of water that will be there. I'm really worried about that. I'm worried about that for my children and for the people that I serve in the community. It would be a public health crisis to not have water here. The crisis would come sooner than we would get to very low water levels. At some point, mortgage companies would refuse to issue 30-year mortgages here. It's been my experience since moving to Kingman that folks from Pima County, Maricopa County, when I say where I live, they say to me, why would you move there? Why would you live in Kingman? And I'm asking you to please rise above maybe the ambivalence that you might feel for a neighbor county and to act. Please issue the INA. It won't affect the current farms that are there, but it will at least stop the expansion. It will preserve water rights for future generations. Thank you.
Up next is Bill Fisk. Bill Fisk. All right. Daniel Sudolowski. Daniel Sudolowski. Paul Gaines.
Hi, Kingman resident and aviation or aircraft rebuild owner. So we rely on data constantly. Every day our people actually don't survive. I've got a couple of questions. Is the water table dropping? It's been dropping notably the last number of years, like it's measurable.
So yeah, those 3 example monitoring wells I showed, there was the one by Kingman that was measurably dropping, the one by Truxton Wash, which was recently dropping, and then the one up by Pierce Ferry, which is flat. And there's over 100 wells in the basin that you could look at and see variable results depending on where you are.
Which means the outflow is greater than the inflow at the recharge or replenish rate. This is a very obvious, I'm just recapping, correct?
The outflow and the inflow are slightly different than what you're going to see in individual monitoring wells, but yes, you are correct that the outflow exceeds the inflow and that will cause water level decline.
I don't doubt that the farmers here, a lot of them are using current technologies and monitoring using a lot less water than they ever did, ever. I'm sure they're able to, with computer and modeling and GPS and all the things they've talked about, which are wonderful technologies. The data is the water table is dropping. That's the only data I really need to see to support the INA. Thank you.
All right, so we were right at 8:30. As I said, if you didn't get a chance to provide comments here, we provided a speaker card. You can provide comments to the department, and there's the contact information there on the screen. So I really want to thank everybody for participating. I want to thank everybody for the great public comment. Your comments will be considered by the director of the department. Information related to today's meeting will be posted on ADWR's website at the address shown on the screen. Once available, the recording from tonight's meeting will also be posted online.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, all written comments should be addressed to Sharon Scantlebury. The mailing address for the Arizona Department of Water Resources, attention Sharon Scantlebury at 1110 West Washington Suite 310, Phoenix, Arizona 85007, and Sharon's fax number is 602-771-8686, and her email address is shown there on the screen and on the business cards as you're exiting on the sign-in table. So with that, I want to thank everybody again. Have a great night, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.